We talked about this a bit last week, that sort of surprising conceptually is that the sharpest economic divide in America today is not between boomers and millennials. It is within the millennial cohort, between those with access to the bank of mom and dad and those without, which implicates a couple of other things I want to get to with our next guest and the author of the piece from which I am reading. He's Aaron Brown, longtime risk manager in the hedge fund space, author of the just-released Wrong Number, How to Extract Truth from a Blizzard of Quantitative Disinformation. Aaron, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So let me ask you this question before we get to that divide I just mentioned. You write this statement I would like you to unpack. The young really are buying back at retail what their grandparents received free. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, that does pack a lot of stuff together.
Right.
So back when I was growing up, so this is 1960s or so, you got a lot of stuff free if you were a middle-class white American family. You tended to live in a neighborhood where you had good schools, low taxes. You had they were safe, and you could kind of rely on everybody being in a homogenous culture. It was a kind of a boring culture. It was one that a lot of people ran away from, especially in the sex, drugs, and rock and roll years of
Sure.
the 60s and 70s. But it was safe, and it was cheap, and it was it was a good life. You paid your bills, you cut your grass, and things kind of were taken care of for you. So that all changed, and now it's very, very expensive to buy those things. You want a safe neighborhood with a decent commute and a big house and a good schools. It costs more than a lot of young people can afford.
Right. And so the millennial cohort, I mean, still though, if you're looking at the wealth accumulation, boomers to millennials, I mean, when you say that the divide isn't really as big between boomers and millennials as it is to millennials without mom and dad's checkbook versus millennials that do have access, I mean, is that just a sort of way to understand what's happening in the millennial cohort rather than actual, accuracy in terms of net worth between the boomers and millennials?
Yeah, it's within the millennials that a millennial whose parents are successful and generous actually has a pretty easy financial life compared to previous generations. But a millennial who doesn't have those advantages for one reason or another is bidding against very, very wealthy people who have either, both from the previous generation and his own generation. And it's pretty hard to bid against those people if you're, trying to, you're starting out in life, you're paying off your student debt, you're trying to start a family, things like that. If you don't have any help with today's housing prices and really it's mainly housing prices we're talking about here, it's pretty tough. Maybe you're renting, you can't afford to buy. Maybe you've got a, 90-minute commute. Maybe you've got a place with bad schools, or a lot of crime. And it's pretty hard to buy your way out of those things, while you're trying to start out in life.
Something else, though, too, about talking sort of grandparents compared to millennials. This is and family structure. A piece by our friend Ian Rowe, who runs a group of charter schools in the Bronx, and Brad Wilcox at the American Enterprise Institute. The Hidden Factor in Student Success Family Structure. They talk about, they open their piece basically saying, New Yorkers ask why so many Asian students and so few black students are admitted to the city's elite public schools. Only 3 of the 777 students in Stuyvesant High School's incoming class this year are black. This again has led to complaints about the entrance exam, demands that it be scrapped, articles about how the system is rigged, and so on and so forth. Missing from the debate is any discussion of family structure. 2 numbers that seldom surface in discussions about race in America's schools. 80% of Asian children nationwide live with their married birth parents versus 30% of black children, according to Census Bureau. This factor, whether a child has 2 married parents at home, predicts success in school or admission to a school like Stuyvesant almost as well or even better than race. So that has to translate into this larger discussion of where any cohort, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, where they stand relative to the generations that have come before us, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Now, I'm not a sociologist. I try to stick with simpler stuff like money.
Okay.
But yes, and wealth accumulation is really a family project. And if your families stick together, which is again, those grandparents who had the nice suburban life, they were from intact families, and they had grandparents who helped them. And it makes life a lot easier if you're on your own, if you don't have parents who can or want to help you, or who aren't together or who aren't alive. Life's tough as an orphan.
Right. Yes. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of variables here. I understand. I just want to sort of include that. I'm going back to what you said, too, about buying back at retail what grandparents receive for free, millennials that don't have mom and dad's checkbook. You point out some fixes to this sort of de facto caste system, and so like how should we think about those disparities, even when some millennials, are doing relatively well if you just look at them in isolation, but not as well as many in their same cohort when you include these other variables that you did.
I'm not sure we need to actually fix things. I'm a big believer in people fixing things for themselves. But yes, some of the things we can do is we can get rid of some of the barriers that these people face. Things like land use, excessive land use rules, excessive occupational licensing, all the things that allow the people who got there first to build walls and price out the newcomers. It would be nice to have a more free and open place. And in fact, we have states that are trying to do this kind of thing, and they do attract a lot of talent and a lot of businesses.
Well, the other piece of this too, I mean, just talking economics and economic variables, is government, and thinking about government in the 50s and 60s and its share of the take, if you will, and share of production versus what it is today. In fact, Elon Musk did an interview with the editor-in-chief of The Economist that he may have regretted after the fact. But anyway, he was asked about his time at Doge and whether he got too involved in politics. And this was his take.
I think I got a little too involved in politics, got carried away, frankly. So the goal with the sort of Doge stuff was to try to do something about the deficit, which is massive, where the interest payments exceed the amount of money spent on the Department of War. Like, basically, if you add up all the money spent on what is now the Department of War and the and intelligence in the U.S., that is smaller than the interest payments on the debt. So that we need to sort of take a close look at spending and make sure that money is being spent in sensible ways and that it is not wasted or spent on fraudulent activities. I got a lot of flack from this for this, obviously, but the people don't understand just how simple it was for the Doge team to approve payments. If we literally we just asked to have the contact information of the recipient, or some evidence that, say, money was going to its intended purpose, but over and over that we're told we need to wire money for some sort of important cause in Africa, and we're like, okay, but the wiring instructions are to Deloitte & Touche in D.C., in Washington D.C., not to Africa. So we would like to send the money to Africa. Can you please connect us with the recipients so we can send them the money directly? And then we'd get silence.
We don't need to relitigate Doge. I have no doubt.
I mean, part of that just is indicative of the larger discussion of, public sector spending, crowding out private sector investment, and artificially raising the prices of things. In addition to the promise that persists to this day, despite where we are financially in terms of debt and unfunded liabilities, which is the stuff that you say grandparents receive for free. That's still promised by the political class today. It's just not delivering, and in part because government has become, arguably, so unwieldy and rapacious.
Yes, I do think there's a severe fiscal problem. It's not the size of the debt so much as the total lack of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
There's no sustainable plan. There's no, rationale for these things. But, that's been true my entire life, and I have no faith that it's going to change anytime in the near future. So I focus on the other side. As long as we can grow the economy fast enough, we can survive what Congress fritters away. If economic growth slows, fiscal responsibility is not going to solve the problem. We can't fix our way out of this problem with better politicians. What we need is to continue attracting talent, investing it in good things, growing the economy, innovating, being the place in the world where all the talented people want to come.
And are you, just as an aside, are you an AI maximalist when it comes to future growth?
Yes, absolutely. AI is going to be a tremendous key and is going to end a lot of our problems. It's going to create a lot of new problems too, but I'm much happier, facing up to that, new challenges than I am to living with the same problems over and over.
Aaron Brown, longtime risk manager in the hedge fund space, author of the just released Wrong Number, How to Extract Truth from a Blizzard of Quantitative Disinformation. Aaron, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And he joined us in the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Maybe you've thought about taking a cruise.